People cannot survive this. This is what's happening. It's very, 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 very simple. It's very simple. Very, very simple. The central banks have destroyed the economy for profit with usury, and it's only getting worse.
For the Posterity is a satirical production intended for comedic and entertainment purposes only. Discussions related to spirituality, law, finance, health, and any other topics are fictional and are not factual advice. Opinions expressed do not reflect the views of For the Posterity, its hosts, or its guests. Consult professionals for serious matters. The participants of this production assume no liability for actions taken based on this content. Enjoy, and do not take anything seriously.
Hey there, welcome back to For the Posterity. I am Chip, and I am going over this morning some of our favorite quotes from our forefathers about central banking. I'll just read this little summary here, and then I'll jump into the quotes. It's just to give some context about where they came from and what brought them up, who said them, stuff like that. So it says, in his July 10th, 1832 veto message for the recharter of the Second Bank of the United States, Andrew Jackson condemned the bank's bold effort to control the government. It's interesting. Referring to its attempts to exert undue influence through political lobbying, selective lending, and economic manipulation. Under Nicholas Biddle's leadership, the bank was accused of using its control over the federal funds and currency to sway politicians, support pro-bank candidates, and tighten credit to pressure Congress, particularly during the early recharter push in 1832, which Jackson saw as a challenge to his authority. He viewed the bank as a monopolistic institution that favored wealthy elites, including foreign investors, over the common people, threatening governance and economic stability. Jackson's warning of premonitions of the fate highlighted his fear that such centralized financial power could lead to a loss of liberty and the rise of a financial aristocracy. This veto, a key moment in the bank war, reflected broader tensions over federal power and economic control, though it later contributed to the Panic of 1837. Okay, there's a little bit of context, so we'll just jump right in and start reading some of these quotes. Because times don't change, man. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to John Taylor on May 28, 1816, so this is well over 200 years ago, 210 years ago, says, quote, "I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale." Imagine that. Another quote, Thomas Jefferson, "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." Does that sound accurate? Does that sound familiar? Oh, so much insight. Another quote, Thomas Jefferson, "Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself." Yeah, that's true. There's no value. It's illusory value. There's nothing there on this paper money that we use, this dollar. It's just digital and paper. Nothing. The Bank of the this is Thomas Jefferson again. "The Bank of the United States is one of the most deadly hostilities existing against the principles and form of our Constitution." Letter to Albert Gallatin in 1803. It's amazing. The foresight that these guys had, it makes me wonder how many people at that time understood this same problem existed. Another quote from Thomas Jefferson, "The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people, to whom it properly belongs." Attributed to Jefferson in historical writings, though exact source is unclear. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that he wrote, a lot of things that he said about central banks and money. We know that much. Andrew Jackson said, "Is there no danger to our liberty and independence in a bank that in its nature has so little to bind to our country. These people don't hold allegiance to anything. They hold allegiance to the power that the currency provides, and that's it. It doesn't matter where, when, who. The trivium is not in effect when it comes to the central bank's money, because it's not grounded in anything and has no country to tie it down. Another quote from Andrew Jackson. Well, that one was in 1832, a little less than 200 years ago. Andrew Jackson said, "The bold effort the present bank has made to control the government are but premonitions of the fate that awaits the American people should they be deluded into a perpetuation of this institution or the establishment of another like it." Yeah. That was in July 10th, 1832, so a little less than 200 years ago. But these people had the foresight. They knew. I would be so curious the discussions that they had and the people that were involved in this and how society felt. I'm sure that obviously they went through something to hold these opinions, these extremist views, Another quote from Andrew Jackson: "If Congress has the right under the Constitution to issue paper money, it was given them to be used by themselves, not to be delegated to individuals or corporations." That is a powerful one, because the government doesn't issue the money. A private corporation does, the Federal Reserve, and it's for the profit of the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, etc. All of the elites, the lot of them. It's a private corporation. It's not federal, and it has no reserves. Yet we call it the Federal Reserve. James Madison says, "History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over government by controlling money and its issuance." That's amazing. No, times don't change, man. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. John Adams, "All of the perplexities, confusion, and distress in America arise not from defects in their Constitution or Confederation, not from want of honor or virtue, so much as from the downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation." All of them. Every single one of them. All perplexities, confusion, and distress in America. Every single one of them comes from people not understanding what is happening with our money and how we got here and how we're going to fix it. I mean, where are we going to go? Every single problem is rooted in this paper problem that we have. It's just a math problem. We live in a math problem. Next one's from Benjamin Franklin. He says, "The refusal of King George to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution." Well, I don't know if that was so much. It says it was attributed to Franklin, though exact sources unclear, often cited in discussions of colonial currency. So, yeah, I mean, I would have to say, it was not so much over a T-tax. I think that was definitely part of the lie that we were taught, but certainly over the money, because look at where we're at. People can't afford anything. I mean, there's people out there paying $1,700 a month in school loans, and it's all interest. Everything, this loaning money at interest, this usury, this central banking, and you can justify it. I understand the justifications, but the problem is debt-issued currency, centrally issued, central banking. That's the problem is central banking. It's always the problem. Root of all evil is central banking. The money should be with the people, not with the banks. But here we are. We got here after all these years, after 200 years. These guys knew. Man, they called it, and we just our education was pulled away from us. We more or less just forgot history. Or we were taught a different history. We were taught irrelevance. Thomas Paine says, "The punishment of a runaway slave is often lighter than that of a man who counterfeits the money of a nation." That was Dissertation on Government in 1786. which highlights the severity of undermining public trust in currency. Oh, it's a big deal, buddy. And accountability has to be made because you cannot calculate the distortions. The distortions are incalculable. Alexander Hamilton, and he was a proponent, actually. He said that he thought we should have a stable currency for economic relations, but he said to emit an unfunded paper as a sign of value ought not to continue. So even he knew if it's going to be centrally issued, there's got to be something backing it. It can't just be debt-based. It can't just be made up. It can't just be numbers in a system, you know? Even a proponent of the central bank at the time knew that. Knew that money had to have value tied to something realistic. George Washington said, paper money has had the effect in your state that it will ever have to ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice. That was in 1787, January 9th, 1787, in a letter to Jabez Bowen. 1787, man. 250 years ago. This is amazing. Thomas Jefferson again. The monopoly of a single bank is a thing to be detested, and I hope we shall crush it in its birth. Yeah. And now we all live under the central bank of the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve Central Bank. It's an amazing thing. It's terrible. Another one from Thomas Jefferson. We are undone, my dear sir, if legislation is still permitted, which makes our money, much or little, a prey to the caprice of interest. Yeah. We are all in trouble. That was in 1813. Another one, Andrew Jackson. Gentlemen, I too have been a close observer of the doings of the Bank of the United States. You are a den of vipers and thieves. I have determined to rout you out, and by the eternal God, I will rout you out. 1813, man. We didn't succeed well at the time. You know, this most insidious version, you know, the Federal Reserve version, point whatever version it is in history. I mean, this isn't a new thing. This is just taking foothold at this time. But we knew better. We knew better. We knew better. You know, we had learned our lessons at the time. And that was in a speech in 1832 to the delegation of bankers. Amazing. This one's from James Madison. The banks, by their own mismanagement, have produced the very evil they were intended to prevent. And that is a huge one because the Federal Reserve, they purport to protect the value of the currency, to protect the purchasing power, to provide stable economic whatever, blah, blah, blah. They didn't. They failed. They failed. The dollar has lost all of its purchasing power since the founding of the Federal Reserve, and that has caused homelessness, that's caused indebtedness, that's caused everything that you experience, every pain, every struggle, all the abundance that is siphoned away is for no other cause than a central bank. It's an amazing thing here. Here's one from John Adams that says, our whole banking system I ever abhorred. I continue to abhor it and shall die abhorring it. Yeah, me and John Adams both, buddy. There is nothing good about this system. Not one single thing comes from a central bank that is beneficial to the people. There's all theft. They are all thieves. Benjamin Franklin said, oh, that was 1811, excuse me. And Benjamin Franklin said, the riches of a country are to be valued by the quantity of labor its inhabitants are able to produce, and not by the quantity of gold and silver they possess. Where's all the value come from? You know? Pop quiz. Is anything worth anything without us being here? The answer is no. We are the value. We create the value when we go do things in this world. We are the value. There is no other money. It is this skin and this flesh and this bone. It's these beautiful minds that we have. We are the value. Thomas Paine said, paper money is like dram drinking. I'm not sure what that is. It relieves for a moment by deceitful sensations, but gradually diminishes the natural heat and leaves the body worse than found it. Okay, so dram must be booze. Yeah. That's, you know, in 2008 and in COVID and in every instance where any time, you know, in 1930s when the bank has experienced turbulence, when the economy has experienced turbulence at the behest of the central bank, the solution of the central bank is to add more currency units into society. So is that solving any problems? The answer is no. Unequivocally no. They paper over everything, and it relieves it for a moment by deceit. You have all these politicians that understand not anything, not a single, not the first thing about economics, and they all have degrees, and they're all attorneys, and maybe they do understand. A lot of people think they do understand, and that they're with the Brotherhood of the Saturnalians, and that they're in the club, and so they know what they do, but do we really have any idea, if they know? I have no idea. I don't think so, but I know that for a fact that it does temporarily alleviate the pain when you have a money printing bank. There's nothing that's actually solved by that. It just devalues all of everyone else's labor, everybody else's wealth. That's what it comes down to, is it devalues your labor. You want to call it money, it's your labor. Your labor is your money. What you spend time doing is your value. So that's what it devalues when they offer deceitful solutions, such as money printing, raising the debt ceiling. It's going to solve all of our problems, when it actually creates further distortions. It spreads the divide between the haves and have-nots. It makes things impossible. You can't run a society like this, not forever. You can run it for a little bit, not forever. There's another quote by George Mason. "The purse of the people is the real seat of sensibility. It is to be drawn upon with caution and in a way that does not impair the public confidence." Does not impair the public confidence. Yeah, because once you lose faith and trust in the old debt instrument, what options do you have, right? That was in 1788. Another one, Governor Morris. "The moment you give a government paper money, you give it the power to destroy itself and its people." Man. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the quotes I have for today. I think that was about 15 of them. And the foresight that these guys gave us, I mean, they've said it all. We knew exactly what they were going through. We know exactly what they were saying. It doesn't need interpretation. If you think that needs interpretation, let me know. How did you interpret those? Because I don't think that they were in support, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong that they may have wanted to have a central bank, and they may have just been misquoted, I guess. I don't know, but I know that, central banks cause the problems, all the problems, and they will not be solved until the central banks are ended, until accountability is had. And the government has come to a place where if a business is too big to fail, it's going to cause too many issues in society they don't want to deal with. You can't deal with. Imagine that. In the last thing I said, that if your bank fails and you get no deposits back, and whose fault is this? Is it your fault? I mean, for someone to not understand where they're putting their money and to not do the research required to understand the function of money and blah, 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 blah. Who has time for all this stuff? Who has time to sit and read books about how nations, collapse because of money printing and coin clipping and the history of all of these things? People really just don't have time. I've been lucky in that. I've had the time. A lot of people don't. But once you pull the curtain back, you can't close it. And you know that all the evils in the world that we experience today, every single one of them, is stemmed from central bank money printing. It's from the devaluation of the currency. It is from the debt-based money. It is from all of the fake. It's just all fraud. It's all fraud and fake. And there's no money. There's no money here. We have no money that we use on a day-to-day. And that was why in the Constitution, under Article 1, Section 10, that gold and silver are the only things to be coined as money in America. And that's an oath that everyone is taken to uphold, and then we just operate as if, well, that's an exception. That's an exception. We don't have to use gold and silver, why would you want to do that? Gold and silver are not good money. They are heavy, they're hard to divide, they're all the other things, and I agree with that. I think that gold and silver money was a good money at the time, and the truth is, if we had still been using gold and silver with the technology that we have available today, then yeah, it would be a really good thing. We could make it divisible, much more divisible, but the problem is verification. If somebody gives me a gold coin, I have no way to verify if that coin is real or not. I have no way to know until it's too late, and I don't want to accept funny money. I have to. I have to accept these funny money dollars, this clown currency, because that's what the world uses. That's what I have to buy groceries with, is this made-up paper, these valueless notes. And all this is just a game. These banks, you can go, if you open a bank account, you can, I wish I had it with me, man, I would bust it out and show you, that you can be permissioned by the bank to use invoices and such as currency notes, as notes, as mediums of exchange. And so you can just take an invoice in the same way. That's what the banks do. You sign your car note, sign your house note, sign whatever, and they take it to the bank, and then they get paid on demand with interest for the total of that note. So that's what it says in the UCC. I don't remember what part. I know it's there. I've read it several times. I probably should have wrote it down, but you can check it out. Let's go check out the UCC, man. You all got AI in your pocket. Ask AI what in the UCC says anything about a deposit and receiving funds on demand with interest. It's in there. So that's what these banks do. It's all funny money paper. It's all games, and then there's a certain tier of people that can experience a certain level of money, and then there's the rest of us that have to rely on debt-based fiat, this broken, useless, this paper. I mean, it has no value. It's completely made up. It costs more to print. Cut down the trees and blah blah blah. I mean, you want to talk about green energy? How much? Oh man, how much waste? Truly, how much waste goes to just keeping the lights on and the heat on at one of these banks? These banks don't serve any purpose. So once you understand that, once you realize the banks serve no purpose, they just exist to extract. They are middlemen. Everyone that works at a bank is a middleman, trying to feed their family. I get it. But the problem is everyone's doing their job, and just doing your job perpetuates the problem. So keeping the lights on in a bank, these banks aren't small. These banks aren't small. I know what it costs to keep my house warm in the winter. I can't imagine the bills on these banks. I can't imagine what it costs to keep these guys heated and lit. So you want to talk about green energy? The first thing you could do, the most efficient thing you could do, and what would probably make the absolute most difference, shut down the Federal Reserve. Every single one of them, all 12 or 13 of them. I think it's 13 of them. Of course, 13 of them. It's always about numerology. Shut them down. See how much waste there is. There's so much waste. There's so much inefficiency. There's so much inefficiency caused by banks existing. And that's just existing. That doesn't count the currency they issue. That doesn't count the homelessness caused. That doesn't count the distortions. That doesn't count the inflation. That doesn't count the ups and downs. Everything is controlled. Every rise and fall in the market is controlled. It's all theater. A stock market trader is just a gambler. It's just someone with a gambling problem. And I say this because, hey, I've done this stuff. I've lost my fair share of money doing these things, and I've understood, oh yeah, this is all just a game. You've got Jerome Powell comes out to have a Fed meeting, and it depends on the color. If he's wearing a purple tie, then the market tanks. And that's how these people, that's how they play the game. That's what's happening, and that's what all these degen bets, polymarket, all this stuff, man. It's peak degeneracy. What a time to be alive. But how do we get out of it? Our forefathers had the foresight. They knew, and they had the fortitude to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong. You are going to enslave the posterity if you do not stop this. We cannot let these banks continue to, we can't let them be created. We can't let them operate in this country, or our children will wake up homeless and indebted. And here we are, homeless and indebted. Guys, that was only 200 years ago. So just because you didn't learn it in school doesn't mean it's not true. The victors write history. And we were taught so many things at such a young, impressionable age that we didn't know how to discern truth from lie. But now you are an adult. You can discern truth from lie. what is right, what is wrong. You have the ability to determine how society functions, how it should function, and what bridge is needed to fill that gap. And at this point, the best thing that we could do is end the central bank and end all of the central banks. Little regional banks are a different thing. That is local people saving their labor value in deposits, and it's completely different. And if a bank wants to rehypothecate at that point, at least you're holding your community accountable. I mean, that's all it's about, is your locality, So I can imagine if your neighbor is out there at the bank, he's probably not going to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak, and start rehypothecating your deposits so that when you come and get your money out of the bank, there's nothing there because it's all been loaned out. I mean, that's all we're at. That's why there was bank runs in the past, is because that's what they did. Nothing has changed, except now banks have no reserves. They don't have to have anything. They just create it. It's all in the UCC. None of this is made up. But again, I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. I'm not an attorney. Don't listen to me. Blah, blah, blah. All the same stuff. This is just comedy. This is just satire. This is all for fun. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest things I think that I have ever come across, which it's not. It's more or less consumed me for the last 6 or 7 years, this central bank issue, this math problem that we live in. And it's only getting worse. People cannot survive this. So if you don't understand what's happening, rewind this and listen to the quotes. This is what's happening. It's very, 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 very simple. It's very simple. Very, very simple. Central banks have destroyed the economy for profit with usury. You create loans from nothing on interest, and you are expected to pay them back. How can you pay something back that was never loaned to you in the first place? It was literally a number on a computer. How do you pay that back? How do you pay that back? You can't pay that back. It's a math problem. There is not enough. It is debt-based. It comes from nothing. I can't believe we can't understand this in 2025, people. They understood it in the 1700s. This is how nations fall. It's always the damn money, because it's greed. It's human greed, or it's Luciferians. Whichever it is, whichever you believe, it's greed, and it's slavery. That's all it is it's slavery. And it's there's no reason. You and me, we are not different. We're all the same. Everyone here is the same. We are all of the same cloth. There's nothing different about these people that makes them special. They just have access to printed money. They just have access to central banking. They have access to the Fed window. They have access to what we don't have access to. It's a tiered society, and we are not up on the upper tier. I realized that from a young age that something was not right here. How is it that all of the money you make, I've seen $1,700 a month school payments, and they're all interest. Go take a look at your credit card balances. How much of that is interest every single month? And it's not that, you're not financially responsible or whatever. No, there's an end game to this. The end game is poverty. It's everything is owned by a third party, by a corporation, by the banks, by the elite. They loan it out at interest, and since there's nothing backing it, there's no choice but to take whatever collateralized it. Okay? If you if I give you a house, if you buy a house, and this is our contract right here, okay? And this right here says house, $100,000, whatever, arbitrary amount. This is what your house is. This is what backs the loan. This is what backs the loan. If you don't repay this, I am taking your house. Okay? What is this? This is something I made up. Something that I made up, and I wrote a number on, and I said, hey, this is the number, $100,000, that you have to pay me back plus interest, so $300,000 total, or whatever it is. And if you don't pay me back this amount right here, then I'm going to take your house. How are you going to pay this back when I just made this up? Where are you going to get this money from? I just made this myself. I made this up. This came from me. Okay? All of the money is written. 100,000. Boom. Right there. All of it is from me. I made it. And now I'm telling you to pay me back. How are you paying me back? Oh, well, just go ahead and take another loan. That's the central bank in a nutshell. Friends, family. I can't say it any more simple. It is literally all made up. There's nothing backing it. And our forefathers saw the dangers in this. So here you are, and I guess you have a choice. You know, oh yeah, you don't have to get the loans. Well, they've made living so untenable because they control the cost of everything. I mean, we could talk about regulation. That's the next thing I have to talk about. This stack of paper right here. I got a lovely letter from, and keep in mind, I'm just me. I'm just me working for myself out here. So my required expenses, my regulatory costs are quite low comparatively, but you can extrapolate this and apply it to any business, any company, any other situation. But so right here is my insurance renewal. I have to have business insurance, obviously. You have to have business insurance in case something happens. Well, insurance in itself is a whole nother episode, and I can touch on that lightly, briefly, but ultimately, insurance doesn't pay out. It's a scam. It's a racket. 85% of the thing that you pay for insurance goes to premiums, whether it's car insurance, business insurance, what have you. It all goes to paying somebody else's salary, and doesn't really, it never covers. It rarely covers what you need it to cover when you need it to take effect. But anyway, so I got this renewal notice from my insurance company this last week, and it says, notice of policy conditional renewal. Okay, make you aware of the renewal. If you have questions, give us a call. Basically, we are not going to renew your policy the way that it was because we have now created more stipulations. So this is the new policy, and it's they sent me several pages, basically telling me what I am no longer allowed to do, and if I would like to continue to do these things, I would have to pay a separate insurance policy. My insurance would go up, and I would have to pay more. So in order for me to pay more, what does that mean? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I would have to charge more. That's what that means. So, here it is. They said that I cannot do, and keep in mind, this might sound, if you're not familiar with construction stuff, this might sound scary or whatever, but it's just things that you come across working on old houses. That's all it is, okay? I can't tell you how many crawl spaces I've been in that have asbestos down there, and I have to lay down a vapor barrier, and there's asbestos insulation, so I have to work around it, throw on a mask, whatever. I don't really have a choice. But it says the following work is excluded now from my plan unless I insure it or hire a subcontractor to do it. So anything involving asbestos, lead, and mold evaluation or abatement. Okay, mold is everywhere. It's these old houses. It's these old houses. Work using cranes, lifts, or bucket trucks. I rarely use those, but I have. Sometimes you got to operate equipment, and it's not a serious thing. Demolition work, any demolition work, I need to be separately insured now to come and cut a wall out of your house. I have all the tools to do it. I have the capability. I've been doing it for years, but now all of a sudden I can't do it unless I pay more. Okay. Foundation work, again, sounds scary. It's not. I've leveled an insane amount of houses in my day. Okay, it's not trivial work. It's a guy with tools that can get stuff done. That's all it is. Sheeting, I can't do any kind of sheeting. OSB sheeting, drywall sheeting. If it's over 5 feet, they give you any sheet over 5 feet, which is funny because they sell them in 4x8s. Unless you want to pay a premium for already cut wood, then you can get the 4x4 sheets, and that's just going to charge more. And it's more out of the customer, and that's all this is. Any retaining walls, any waste removal, any roofing. So can't do any of that unless I pay more, evidently. Fireproofing restoration, which is just performing work over 3 stories in height. Work in new developments or tracts. Well, there will be more than 10 units, so I can't do anything in a new subdivision unless I pay more. And yeah, that was the subcontractor's limitation that was added to my policy. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it goes. They regulate you into oblivion so that you cannot afford to feed your family. I mean, that's the thing is now, for me to pay to up my insurance, I have to comply. I have to pay more. So it's not about me being budget savvy. It's not about me being responsibly, fiscally responsible. It's not about any of that. It's about what can I pay? That's all it is. What can I pay? Can you pay to play? Pay to play economy, man. You got banks, you got insurance companies, and you got the government. And they tell you what you can and can't do. I'm just a man out here with tools. I just want to work. I like to fix things, right? I'm a guy that can fix stuff. And me and everybody else, we're all just guys out here with tools that like to fix stuff. I'm not trying to get rich. This isn't how you get rich, fixing stuff for people. You get rich by banking and by playing around and gambling with stocks. That's how you get rich. I just like to fix stuff. I just wanted to be a guy that fixed things, and I am limited further by what I can do because of regulations and because of legalities. And sure, you want someone that is going to be qualified to work on your house and whatever. But the problem is you don't have to be qualified to pay for this stuff. I can be an idiot with $10,000 and go out and get all the licensing, all the certifications, and not have a clue what I'm doing. That is incredibly common. How many people have hired a bad contractor, that doesn't know how to do anything, how to frame a wall, So yeah, there you have it. I mean, when the corporations take it out of my ass, I have to take it out of yours, and that's how it works. This is trickle down economics. This is the real trickle down economics, is that there is a floor set, boom, and it's set by the government, set by the Federal Reserve, and it's set by the banks, and they want you to comply with certain regulatory requirements because, why? Anybody guess? That's right, because they get paid. And if they set a floor and everyone has the same floor and it's across the board, it's a floor, then there's no real diversity. It really truly is a monopolistic bank. And that's what the guys said. That's what the founding fathers were afraid of, was this, because now they can just tune it up and down at their desire, and the distortions cause no bounds because there's no limit, because they issue money. Here you go, $100,000 on a piece of paper. Sign this. Pay it back. How are you going to pay this back? I just made it up. I just created it. How are you paying it back? What are you going to do? Take a second one? Take a third one? What's your end game? Bankruptcy? Yep. And then what happens in bankruptcy? Banks take all the chips. All the chips go to the bank. It's a crafty system they've built. So if you don't understand this, I hope that this cleared it up a little bit. It's pretty simple stuff. It is not very difficult. I am not a smart man. I never said I was. But I understand this stuff. I understand theft. How can anyone be okay with this? We are literally being stolen from, and our posterity. And you have to realize your kids are the ones at risk. My kids are the ones at risk. We can swing it, sure. Oh, it's hard and I did it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, whatever. Yeah, you can make it work. But what's going to happen to the future generation? It's only going to get worse. This is a one-way game. This Keynesian economic central banking debt-issued currency system. There's no... I mean, all you have to do is think about the 40s, the 50s, like when this thing started, the central bank, when it started, what were costs? You could get a soda for 5 cents, is what they say. You could get gas was, pennies a gallon. And it doesn't have anything to do with scarcity. They're hydrocarbons. They're not fossil fuels. There's no dinosaur under the thing that rots down and makes that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbon. Okay? It's broken down carbon. It's hydrocarbons. Hydrogen and carbon. You guys have seen the periodic element or periodic table of the elements. Hydrocarbons. That's fuel. There's no scarcity involved, man. There's labor involved. We have to extract the stuff, sure. But again, I'm not an oiltologist, I'm not any of these things. I'm just a guy sharing my experience with the collective. So if you got any input, please let me know. But in the last couple videos ago, I posted, there's water-powered cars in the 70s. There was fully hemp manufactured cars, clothing, hemp plastics, all this stuff exists. The abundance is here. It's here and now, and it's being taken by the banks. Stop letting the banks take it. That's the thing, is that BlackRock, they don't even, money doesn't mean anything to these banks. They can go out and they can offer 30% over asking, because why the fuck does it matter? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they spend, you guys. They create it. They write it on paper, and then they call it money. And then we use it because we're idiots, because we don't know better, because we didn't heed the warnings of our forefathers. That's all this is we didn't pay attention to history. Well, we were taught the wrong history. That's all it is. We were taught the wrong history. So, be better. Do better. Think about it. This isn't confusing. If you're one of the people I see on TikTok crying about, I can't afford anything. Oh, I can't afford to feed my kids. I can't afford to pay my credit cards. I can't afford to pay my student loans. I can't afford to pay my mortgage. It's not your fault. Just re-listen to the beginning of this video. It's the central banking. It's always the central banking. It's only the central banking. It always has only ever always been the central banking. It will only ever always continue to only ever always be the central banking until we put an end to it. This happens because we've abdicated responsibility. We have given responsibility for our labor value to third-party corporations under the guise of banking. They're not banks. They're syndicates. They're cartels. They're extraction factories. They're middlemen. They serve no purpose. They serve no purpose in society. So there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you tuning in for the powwow hour here on For the Posterity. Again, think about it. Just think about it. Think about some of the things that these guys said, and if you want to go read them, you can go read them on the website. It's fortheposterity.com. I did spend some time putting the website together this weekend. There's the Constitution on there. There's the Declaration of Independence. There's all kinds of stuff. There's a jurisdiction thing that it's 5 parts. That's pretty good. Really good, actually. It took me about 2 days to type it up and add all the photos and stuff. And I think that you could benefit from it. So go check it out, fortheposterity.com, and spread the word. I'm probably going to drop this video on any of the crying TikToks I see of people that can't afford anything, because I am really just trying to educate people on what has happened and how we got here, because people just don't understand. And I am shocked, and I'm tired of living in this world where people don't understand these very simple concepts. It is just math. It's just math. So, learn math, read books, fight evil. That's all you can do. Go get some sunshine. It's a beautiful morning this morning. It's always a beautiful morning. It's good stuff. Okay, well, take care, ladies and gentlemen. Drink some water. Have a nice evening or morning or afternoon or whatever have you, whenever you happen to be listening to this. And I hope that this benefits you in some way. I don't have any intentions to stop, because I will rout out central banking. I will despise it until the day that I die, because I can't understand it. I can't reverse my knowledge on any of this stuff. I can recommend you books if you'd like. I'll send you a book. Contact me. I'll give you a book. I've got over 100 copies of What Has Government Done to Our Money, issued by the Mises Institute. So I would be happy to send you a copy or two. Just reach out to me, and I'll send you one. Otherwise, have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you next time. Thank you for tuning in.